The last page of the building log has my name on it. The final entry in the apartment manager's logbook is dated today and signed with my name. I manage a small apartment building. 12 units. The kind of job that's mostly quiet. Collecting rent. Fielding maintenance requests. Occasionally mediating a noise complaint between neighbors who otherwise get along fine. Part of the job. An old-fashioned holdover from whoever managed the place before me is a physical logbook kept in the building's front office, where I record anything notable each day. Maintenance completed. Incidents, visitors signed in after hours. Then it's mostly a formality at this point. Nobody's checked it in years except me. I started noticing entries I didn't remember writing about 6 weeks ago. But yeah, the first one was small enough that I genuinely doubted my own memory, rather than suspecting anything stranger. An entry dated a Tuesday, noting that I'd let a maintenance contractor into Unit 4 check a water leak. Except I had no memory of the visit, no corresponding work order, and when I called the unit's tenant to ask about it, she said no one had by, and there was no leak. I told myself I had simply made an error, written the wrong date on an entry from a different day. Some ordinary clerical mistake. I've made plenty in the years I've kept this log. I corrected it and moved on. It happened again 11 days later. An entry noting I'd walked the building's perimeter, checking exterior lighting. Written in my own handwriting. Dated the night before, describing details specific enough that it read like something I'd actually did. 2 bulbs out on the east side, one flickering near the mailboxes. I checked the east side that morning. Two bulbs were, in fact, out. One was flickering near the mailboxes. I had no memory of walking the perimeter that night at all. I want to be careful here about what I did and didn't do next, because I think the order matters. I didn't immediately assume something was wrong with me. I assumed first that someone else had access to the office and the logbook, and was either playing an elaborate prank or, more concerningly, actually entering the building at night and doing these small tasks themselves. Then writing an unconvincing approximation of my handwriting to cover it. I changed the office lock. The entries kept appearing. I started leaving a small, deliberately placed object on top of the closed logbook each night before I left. A rubber band, positioned at a specific angle, small enough that only I would notice if it had been moved. Each morning, the object was still there, exactly as I'd left it, undisturbed. And yet, several mornings, there was a new entry inside the closed book beneath it, dated the previous night, in my handwriting, describing something I had no memory of doing. That's when I stopped believing an intruder was responsible and started, with real unease, considering the alternative. I mentioned it to my doctor, framing it carefully, describing the entries as notes I don't remember writing, rather than immediately reaching for the explanation I was privately starting to suspect. She asked a series of careful questions about my sleep, about stress, about whether anyone had ever mentioned noticing me do things at night I didn't recall in the morning. Nobody had, as far as I knew, because I live alone and had no one around at night to notice anything at all. She suggested, gently, that certain sleep produce complex behavior during partial arousal from sleep, walking, performing routine or habitual tasks, even tasks. More of it afterward, particularly under stress or sleep deprivation, both of which, he pointed out, plausibly applied to me given the demands of managing the building. Largely alone. I didn't fully believe it, not because it seemed implausible exactly, but because the entries were too specific, too accurate, too consistent with genuinely correct information. And the only that I couldn't imagine. F. Reliably producing. I decided to test it directly. In a way I now regret slightly for how it turned out, though I don't regret doing it. The building has an old security camera covering the front office and hallway. Low resolution, rarely checked. Mostly there as a deterrent rather than active monitoring. I set it, deliberately, to record and save footage overnight, something I'd never bothered doing before. The next morning, there was a new entry in the log, dated the previous night, in my handwriting, noting I'd checked on a reported smell of gas near Unit 7. Found nothing. I must have had a trip break during in the utility closet. I had again no memory of any of it. I watched the footage with my coffee going cold beside me, and I want to describe exactly what I saw, because it's the part that changed how I understood everything that had been happening. At 2:47 a.m., the office door opens. I walk in, genuinely me, recognizably me, moving with the slow, careful deliberateness of someone half asleep, but functioning, not the frantic or unsettling movement I'd half expect. I go to the utility closet first, off camera briefly, then return, sit at the desk, open the logbook, and write for nearly 4 full minutes. Unhurried, entirely lucid looking, despite what I now know was happening. Then I close the book, stand, and walk back out the way I came, the whole sequence taking under 10 minutes. At no point do I look confused, distressed, or in any way like someone in crisis. I look, disturbingly, like someone simply doing their job. Oh. I've since confirmed. Through a sleep study, my doctor arranged that I do experience something clinically consistent with what she'd suspected. Complex behavior during incomplete arousal from sleep. A pattern, the specialist said, isn't as rare as I assume, though the specificity and functional competence of what I was apparently doing each night surprised even her. I've started taking it seriously in practical terms. Medication, stricter sleep hygiene, a habit of locking the office door from the inside before bed, so that even sleepwalking me can't easily get to the logbook at all. The entries have mostly stopped since, though not entirely. Twice more in the past month, shorter. Less detailed, as though whatever version of me was having to work around the obstacles I've put in its way. I don't know exactly what to make of the fact that the entries were, without exception, accurate, real maintenance issues, real details about the building that I had no waking knowledge of, checked and confirmed correct. I've decided, mostly for the sake of my own ability to keep working this job, not to dwell too long on what that implies about how much of my life I might be handling competently and correctly without ever being awake for it. I still keep the logbook. I still read it every morning before anything else. Most days now, there's nothing new in it overnight. On the days there is, I've stopped feeling frightened by it. Exactly. I've started instead feeling something closer to a strange, quiet gratitude toward whichever part of myself keeps quietly making sure the building is fine while the rest of me sleeps through it entirely. I try not to think too hard about what happens on the night that version of me writes something I very much did not want handled on my behalf.